Meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 37 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. I would like to welcome new members to this committee. So we have as new members MP McGuire, MP Kimmick, and MP Rempel Gardner. Welcome to Citizenship and Immigration Committee. Today, we will continue our study on application backlogs and processing times. I would like to welcome our witnesses for appearing before this committee. All the witnesses will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will proceed into round of questioning. Today, in our first panel, we are joined by Elizabeth Long, barrister and solicitor for Long Mangalji LLP. We are also joined by Janet Denech, Executive Director, Canadian Council for Refugees, and Mary Roman, the Executive Director for Ottawa Community Immigrant Services Organization. Welcome to this committee. All of you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will go into a round of questioning. So we will start with Ms. Long. Ms. Long, you can please begin. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you very much for allowing me to testify. I'd like to speak with you guys today about the issue of backlogs for temporary resident applications, work permits, study permits, visitor visas, and temporary resident permits that deal with inadmissibilities. Temporary resident applications, for the most part, are urgent. Employers need workers to start working for them right away. Students need to go to school. Visitors need to see their families. And yet we are seeing egregious processing times for these applications. For example, inland work permits, 168 days. Work permits at Dubai, visa posts like Dubai, 32 weeks, Singapore, 35 weeks, Pakistan, 37 weeks. Super visa at this New York visa post, 508 days. Caregiver applications, they haven't even been processed since the program opened in 2019. Temporary resident permits and other temporary resident applications that are filed in Canada that are transferred to local offices now take 2 to 4 years to process. The result means that people's lives are held in limbo for untenable lengths of time. There are many people in Canada who become destitute because they're not able to work while their employers experience labor shortages. Classrooms have empty spots because students can't get their study permits. Family members are unable to reunite with their loved ones. How do we fix this? I have a few suggestions. Number one, we need to look at who evaluates the applications. Currently, we're still following the old system that was developed decades ago of using visa posts when we had paper applications and applicants were interviewed by officers, at the visa posts. And these visa posts are determining still most of the applications that are filed in a particular area. This is unnecessary. The law had changed in 2019 to allow applications to be processed by any office, and yet we're still following the old system where the visa posts are processing them. Now we have applications that are all submitted online. IRCC does not need to go and hire people from overseas or bring people overseas. Instead, they should be hiring in Canada, and they should be decided in Canada where we develop officers and teams with specialized expertise to deal with particular applications. This will increase efficiency, and it will also eliminate the discrimination in processing times and rejection rates based on where an applicant is based. Secondly, we need to develop proper criteria that is outlined clearly for the officers and for the public to understand on how these determinations are made. Currently, the criteria of an officer making this just vague decision about whether they feel an applicant is going to return back to the country is completely it's much too vague, and it leads to frustrations on both sides, as well as clogging up the federal court with challenges to decisions that are unreasonable. Finally, we need to be careful about using tools such as Chinook. If the refusal rates jump dramatically after the adoption of these kind of tools, the assumption should be that there is an issue with the system. Now, I understand that your committee has already had several studies dealing with these tools and the underlying issues with them, but I would just like to point out that many of these decisions that come from systems that have adopted these tools are unjustly rendered. And as a result, they lead to the federal courts being clogged with challenges. And then further resources are being employed. So what may seem to be efficient, if it ends in injustice, will actually cause further backlogs and delays. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Long. We will now proceed to Ms. Janet Dench, Executive Director, Canadian Council for Refugees. Floor is yours. You can please begin.
Thank you for the invitation to address the committee as part of your study of application backlogs and processing times. The Canadian Council for Refugees has many concerns about backlogs and processing times, but today I would like to focus on applications for permanent residence from protected persons in Canada and their family members. We addressed this issue in a submission we made in July entitled Accepted Refugees on Hold and Separated from Their Family, which I hope you have before you. Firstly, who are we talking about? Protected persons in Canada are people who have made a refugee claim in Canada and been determined to be a convention refugee or protected person. They can then apply for permanent residence for themselves as well as for their immediate family members, spouse and children, whether inside or outside Canada. At the end of January 2022, there was an inventory of nearly 70,000 applications of accepted refugees, in other words, protected persons and their family members. Yet in February, the government announced a target of only 24,500 for protected persons in Canada and dependents abroad. According to the government's multi-year plan, the target goes up very slightly next year to 25,000. This means that the government is planning for some of the applicants in the inventory in January 2022 not to receive their permanent residence until 2024. The gap between the number of applicants waiting and the target in the immigration levels will only grow because the Immigration and Refugee Board is making more decisions on refugees. This is due to it emerging from the pandemic and the addition of new decision makers. Already in 2021, over 30,000 people were accepted as refugees by the IRB, up from 16,000 in 2020. The 2022 immigration target of 24,500 for protected persons is clearly far too small for the 30,000 people accepted as refugees in 2021, even before considering their family members abroad. As the gap grows between the number of people accepted as refugees and the immigration target, people will be forced to wait longer and longer. Our submission outlines some of the serious consequences for refugees who must wait years to receive permanent residence, but the most devastating impact is prolonged family separation. Often people are forced to flee, leaving their immediate family behind. Their spouse and children may remain in the home country, subject in some cases to threats from the same agents of persecution that the refugee fled. In other cases, family members have also been displaced from their home country and are surviving in precarious circumstances in a third country. Some parents have had to leave their children behind in the care of an elderly relative or even a neighbor. I invite you to listen to the words of one mother. J'ai dû laisser derrière moi mon conjoint et deux de mes enfants. J'ai voyagé parce que je le devais. C'était le seul choix et je pleurais beaucoup, mais j'étais poussée par...
I had to leave behind my husband and two children. I traveled a lot. It was my only choice. My family encouraged me to leave. In 2018, I started to make my way to Canada and become a refugee. I had no family, no friends, and I didn't know anything about Canada's system and life in Canada. It was very stressful to wait for a hearing. It took me 4 years to be able to see my family again. My children and I lost 4 years of our life together. We suffered very much. I could not stand living without my children, and my children were suffering too. They stopped going to school, and they were always afraid. There was no health care, no school. Their life and mine stopped, was on hold. I was always wondering why a great developed country like Canada could allow that family members be separated for so long, especially when we are thinking of children. I think that these 4 years will have a lasting impact on us. We will never forget the pain that we lived through. This pain will never disappear. I would like to stress that IRCC refuses to publish the delays for members of the family abroad for accepted refugees, either globally or per region. In 2021, IRCC informed a journalist that in the case of members of a family of refugees, the delay was 39 months, so more than 3 years. And the processing times vary a lot from one region or country to another. People in Africa or Haiti wait for very long. And this situation is contrary to the commitment by the department to fight racism.
The letter mandate for family reunification applies to refugees and not only family class. Increase immigration targets for protected persons in Canada and dependents abroad. Publish the processing times.
You can wind up. Your time is up.
Publishing the processing times for dependents abroad of refugees and amend the law to provide automatic permanent residence for accepted refugees. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed to Mary Roman, Executive Director for Ottawa Community Immigrant Services Organization.
Thank you, Madam
Ms.
Chair.
Roman, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair and CIMM Committee for inviting Ottawa Community Immigrant Services Organization to share our experience regarding the backlogs of IRCC file processing times. OCISO has been supporting for 45 years newcomers to settle in Ottawa, working in partnership with IRCC. We dealt with many complexities related to immigration waves from different sourcing countries. Today, we would like to highlight the challenges related to 2 specific immigration classes within the general stream. The backlogs for GARs, government-assisted refugees, citizenship applications and PR renewals, and the backlogs for refugee claimants processing times. Most of the GARs are vulnerable multi-barrier clients with a high percentage of disability cases, and most of them, they have challenges in language and digital literacy. As we appreciate the launch of the online application system of IRCC, we acknowledge that these clients cannot navigate the systems by themselves, but rather they depend on our settlement practitioners to help them in processing the PR renewals or citizenship applications and to provide responses in cases of delays. The backlog has extended to 2 years to get decisions for citizenship and for 6 months or over for the renewal of the PRs. GARs cannot return as a repercussion to their sourcing country or reunite with their family till they have Canadian citizenship and Canadian passports for their security and safety. Meantime, we have noticed that the applications submitted post-COVID in 2021 were prioritized and finalized, whereas applications from 2019 and 2020 are still pending. We tracked some cases requiring disability accommodation for hearing and for speaking, but could not be processed, whether for their citizenship testing or their ceremony for months and months. Our practitioners struggled to get responses via the web form supplied or to reach an agent over the phone to get some responses. Again, the children who were attached with adults with delayed processing times with their parents, there were no option to process their independent files without finishing the parents, and this combined with the economic challenges of the costing of the application process for the GARs. OCISO today recommends for this committee and for IRCC doable solutions that might work. Such as adopting the same approach by CRA, where a help desk for nonprofits and volunteers was initiated during the tax season. We suggest that IRCC creates a helpline, which is only accessible by organizational specific code for settlement practitioners and nonprofits regarding overdue processing times to get responses and to attend to our clients. We also suggest freezing for a few months all the new applications for citizenship to finish the queue of the backlog for the previous years and to get starting to accept new files after clearing all of those queued behind. We have a dream, and we are sharing it with you today. We look forward for future innovation of artificial intelligence to triage the applications, where the components of the application in view of CRA, CBSA, security clearance, and IRCC are all linked via an intra-government network so that the system by itself can sort out automatically the complete packages and finalize it to minimize the processing time and the workload on different immigration officers and their human input into the revision of those files. Now, reference the refugee claimants. The backlog is now up to 1 year to get the work permit. It is a fact that refugee claimants are usually skilled and ready for employment. But for 1 year, everything is frozen for them. They are not able to issue a driving license, to work, or to study in universities. They live on income assistance, which is a load in itself on taxpayers and on the government. Without their residency status, they are not able to leave the country or bring in their families or process any application for reunification with their loved ones. OCISO's recommendation is for IRCC to grant open work permits right away to all claimants to alleviate the pressure until the processing of their cases is done. While we are asking for this, this was aligning with the approach adopted by IRCC regarding the Canada-Ukraine Authorization for Emergency Travel, QET, which was a successful experience and put them into employability immediately. We hope to apply this for all refugee claimants as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right on time. With this, we will now proceed to our round of questioning. We will begin with Mr. Maguire. Mr. Maguire, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to give notice of the following motion, which my office will make available to the clerk, and that Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada table in both English and French with the committee until further notice the previous month's number of people entering Canada through non-official points of entry who claim asylum, not later than the 5th of the month succeeding the data. Thank you. I have a number of questions that I'd like to proceed to for Ms. Dench today as well, and I'll just get right into them. Ms. Dench, after reviewing the statistics on the Immigration Refugees Board's website, their most up-to-date data has 13,389 pending asylum claims from irregular border crossers. We know that the number will rise drastically as the RCMP has already intercepted 23,358 individuals as of August of 2022. It's also clear we're on track for over 30,000 irregular border crossers for this year. Is the Immigration Refugee Board prepared to process this dramatic increase in asylum claims so people aren't waiting for years to either get a yes or a no?
Well, of course, we'll have to speak to the Immigration and Refugee Board to have their sense of their capacity, but there has been a very welcome increase in capacity at the Immigration and Refugee Board. They have adapted. I think they were one of the institutions that probably adapted the most quickly to the pandemic situation and having online hearings. And then they have also been given a budget to hire new decision makers. So there's actually quite an increase in the number of decision makers. So that does increase their capacity.
Yeah, thanks. Do you know what specific law or regulation the Liberal government used to stop irregular border crossers from claiming asylum during the pandemic?
Well, it was the Order in Council that was the part of the pandemic border ban. It didn't prevent them from making refugee claims, but it directed them back. So people who came up to the border and made a refugee claim at an irregular point, they were given an appointment, or they weren't given an appointment, but they were told to return to the U.S. and that they would have to come back later to pursue
that's my next question. Sorry for interrupting. We've just got a limited amount of time. My colleagues in this committee may not know this, but as you mentioned, the IRCC's website, it states, and here's the title, asylum claimants who were directed back to the U.S. And under that, it says, we're contacting individuals who wanted to make a claim for asylum in Canada but were directed back to the U.S. because of the COVID-19 border restrictions. These individuals will be able to return to Canada to continue their claim. Do you know how the government collected the data, the contact information for those individuals? And do you specifically know how the government is now contacting these individuals? Is it, by phone, by email, or by letter? Do you know the means of contact?
Well, I think that was happening mostly last year. They had some contact information because when the person came in to the border, they took contact information, so they used that information. They also worked through the non-governmental organizations that the CCR brings together as part of our umbrella. So we took the information and made sure that we passed it out to organizations that might be able to be in touch with people and encourage them to return to Canada. Was there a time frame on that? They were directed to go back and come back once they're contacted, which could have been years, eh? Well, they were given, before the pandemic border ban was lifted, they were given individual appointments to return. But once at the end of November of last year, when the border ban was lifted, then they could choose to come at any time that they wanted. Yeah, I think that most of them have either come or have probably are not going to come. Back in 2017 and 18, the Liberal government was not transparent regarding conversations they were having with the United States administration about amending the Safe Third Country Agreement. So since the election of President Biden, are you aware of any conversations between Canada and the United States about amending the Safe Third Country Agreement? We have followed the news and the rumors like you have, but we don't have any privileged information. I'll take the opportunity to say that we would hope that the government would withdraw from the Safe Third Country Agreement, and then there would be no more irregular crossings. That's interesting as well. Thank you. With the increased numbers of people walking across the border to claim asylum this year, which are already higher than what we saw back in 2017 and 2018, are you aware of any Liberal ministers traveling to the United States, as they did in previous years, to discourage people from irregularly walking across the border to claim asylum? No. Okay, thank you. I think, Madam Chair, I will concede the rest of my time to my colleague, Ms. Rempel.
It's 25 seconds.
Oh,
that's a lot of
well.
time for me to get in trouble, Chair. Thank you. Ms. Dench, earlier this year, actually this month, the CBC published an article stating that the federal government is aiming to create a program that will provide a path to permanent residency for up to 500,000 immigrants who are working in Canada but who do not have official standing. Has your organization or anyone in your organization been consulted by the government on this potential amnesty program?
We have made a submission, which is available on our website, and we had a meeting with the department to discuss our submission.
What aspects of
the... Ms. Rempel, time is up. We will now proceed to Ms. Lalonde. Ms. Lalonde, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Well, I want to say first, thank you to all our witnesses who are in person or certainly on Zoom today. I really appreciate your time and your presentation. And maybe I'll start with Mrs. Roman as first questions. And I'll reflect to something that happened in a previous testimony. And I want your impression on this. So we heard from a witness during the committee that Canada should withdraw from its UNHCR commitment for aiding only private-sponsored refugees. In your opinion, what damage would this create to the overall perspective of helping individuals here who are the most vulnerable in our world?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. I believe that this is going to be a very challenging issue because it doesn't create equity and justice for everyone. We understand the concept of refugee. They are coming to different countries not by choice, but they are forced. So I believe that's going to be very challenging. The privately sponsored refugees, they have some supports of an entourage who are providing them with economic and moral support, whereas others are quite vulnerable and multi-barriered. And I believe through the UNHCR, this is their only way to a safe haven.
Thank you very much for that answer, and thank you for clarification for us. I think that's most important for our government to helping most vulnerable individuals. You did refer in your testimony wanting to talk to us about the GAR and also refugee claimants, and you did open the door on certain solutions. And I guess my question would be, you mentioned future innovations, and that's certainly something top of mind for our government and certainly our ministry, because we know the paper aspect was definitely very difficult during this pandemic. So we are modernizing it. I'm interested to know more about the Better System Interlink that you were, and could you just explore a little bit more in that sense with us, because that's very interesting.
Yes, so it's definitely a great thing that everything now is online, paperless, for a few reasons. One, it's easier for applicants to submit the applications, and B, it's easier for the IRCC officers to pass the files around. We no longer need to be in a specific physical location to be able to access the files. So because of this, we no longer need to go back to be just adhering to the old system of the visa posts and having officers at the visa posts deciding applications for people who are in the countries or in the countries around them. The law also changed in 2019 to allow the minister to have anyone look at these applications. So what I am suggesting is, instead of hiring all these people overseas at the visa posts, let's hire in Canada. Let's provide jobs for people in Canada and the officers, and let's train officers to specialize in specific applications. Let's train officers to specialize in post-grad work permits. Let's train officers to specialize in intra-company transferees. And instead of just visa posts, we have some visa posts determining things in 4 weeks. Other visa posts are determining things in 37 weeks.
Mrs. Long, I'm so sorry. I would like also to hear from Mrs. Roman, if you don't mind. I apologize.
I'm so sorry.
No.
Sorry. I thought you
We appreciate every witness, but maybe allow Mrs. Roman, just based on her testimony, to refer back. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question and for allowing me to respond. So what we were talking about is adopting the same model that some exams like the IELTS or the TOEFL are being automated and triaged online. So if the application components, which usually are ticked for CRA component, CBSA component, if it goes automated and everything is according to the code and everything is meeting, the system should triage the applications to be complete or incomplete. That would cut down almost 75% of the work done by humans because it's ticking all the points. It takes a lot of time to make that cycle between the different government departments. So until the CRA provides its input, the CBSA, if it's all present on an intranet government network, I believe it will automatically answer to each other and finish the application. So that's what we are trying to do, is to take the caseload of human effort from the human officers who are dealing with it, because they have an extravagating caseload, and just try to triage those which are complete and ready to put it in the funnel to process more quickly and to make an equitable standard for everyone. This is not subjective to opinions or to evaluation of different ones. It's a standardized process that's going to be applicable for everyone.
Thank you for that. And I would say, it is...
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Lalonde. Your time is up.
Thank you.
We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Decep. Mr. Brunel Decep, you will have 6 minutes. You can please begin.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to thank our witnesses. Bless you. Thank you for your input in this study. You dealt with many issues during your speeches. I'm not going to have enough time with 6 minutes, but Madam Dench, first with you. The minister, in response to a report on inequities with students from Africa and elsewhere in the world, the immigration minister, Mr. Fraser,
Check it before we proceed. Madam Clerk, if you can please check it.
1, 2, 3, testing, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is this working now? Yes, it's better now.
6 minutes du début, hein?
So I get my 6 minutes from the start? Can we start the timer now? So I wanted to thank the witnesses for their input on this study. You dealt with many issues during your speeches. I can't deal with them all in 6 minutes, but Madam Dench, in response to a report to a study by the subcommittee on foreign students from Africa and elsewhere, the minister said and admitted that there was racism within IRCC, and that could have an impact on the selection of foreign students, depending on where they were from. So for our study, do you think that racism within IRCC has an effect on processing times? Thank you. We think that, yes, there's a lot of racism, systemic racism within the department. It's good that it's at least been recognized by the department. There are interesting programs, working groups within the department. We've had some discussions, and we can see that they are really ready to attack these problems. So, whereas allocation of resources, there's a lot of criticism, and it's been the case for decades. We can see that resources allocated, for example, within African countries are less than other regions of the world, and this has consequences on processing times. And it is a form of racism, exactly. Thank you. You also spoke about the third safe countries. There is a tool, there's an article. The government is still not using this tool. It says that it wants to modernize the agreement with the United States. But shouldn't it be a tool that could be used to help people coming here? And maybe our negotiations with the U.S. Could be concluded more quickly. Yes, we need to suspend the application of this agreement. There are advantages for everyone if we suspend the agreement, because people could come in an orderly fashion to our country, and it would be the end of what's happening on Roxham Road. Fantastic, thank you. And yes, it would be better to greet these persons through this fashion. Now, you spoke about dual intention. You said the Canadian law allows for a student who got its permit to present a permanent residence request, but then at the same time, an agent or an officer can refuse a student permit because the student may decide to stay here after graduation. I'd like to hear you on that. And how does it have an impact on processing times?
Yes. So essentially, right now, we as a country, we have had our policies to encourage international students to come and study in our country and for them to get permanent residence. And, you know, they are the ideal immigrants. As international students who are studying, they're young, they have high education, they are integrated into our society. And yet, when we apply for study permits, we have to explain to the officers why it is that the student doesn't want to study in their home countries, and how it is that their programs are going to help them, not in their careers in Canada or anywhere else, how it is that the programs are going to help them in their careers back home. And applications are routinely denied because the officers say that they don't think that the students will return back to their home country. This dichotomy in the policy is really confusing.
C'est un peu schizophrénique même.
It's quite schizophrenic when we think about it. Madame Long, I'll change the subject. 6 minutes is not enough. Have you noticed that when there's an international crisis, for example, in Ukraine or Haiti, when such a crisis happens, IRCC is not well prepared, and that has an impact on processing times because most of the officers are sent to only deal with these files. IRCC should not have an emergency mechanism in place in order to process these requests quickly instead of being surprised in this manner.
You shouldn't have officers process at visa posts. You should have teams in Canada that are much more equipped to deal with different situations from around the world.
Merci infiniment.
Thank you, Time.
Thank you.
We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to all the witnesses for their presentations. First, I'd like to ask Ms. Long, with regard to the processing delays that's happening pretty well in every single stream within IRCC. You made some suggestions on how to enhance the system, which I really like the idea of sort of having specialized agents on various streams. But the other issue is this: we also have over 500,000 people who are in this country who are temporary foreign workers or undocumented individuals. And at the same time, we also have industry clamoring for more workers. And so they tend to then turn to more temporary foreign workers. So my question is this: should the government be looking to regularize the people that are already here for a variety of reasons, as well as to meet the immigration needs of the labor skill shortage?
Yes, absolutely. Ready and available in labor force in Canada, and many people who are out of status because of issues in the system. It just took too long. For example, over 6 months for a work permit to be evaluated in Canada. When the Conservative government was in place before, they had a law which said that the workers had to leave Canada if they've been working in Canada for more than 4 years. And many people just couldn't leave and they had to stay. Many of these workers are certainly good workers. And I think that a system that allows them to go back into the system will provide us with taxpayers, will provide us with a fantastic, and it would allow families to be able to stay in Canada and finally be able to live their lives peacefully.
And along those lines, if the government were to regularize these individuals, do they need to also address that with a companion piece, which is to address the immigration levels numbers accordingly?
Yes, you do. Immigration levels need to be raised in accordance with labor shortages as well. We are in competition right now with the rest of the world for labor. It's not just high skilled. It's low, what the government says is low skilled. It's across the board. And if we don't increase immigration levels, we are going to lose out.
Same question for Ms. Dench. Same two questions for Ms. Dench.
Well, we certainly would like to see people who are in Canada regularized, and that includes people who have refugee status. As I was saying, even with refugee status, people are waiting a very long time for permanent residence, which causes great hardships. But at the same time, I think it's important for us to not to do that at expense of other people who are in need. The number of people in need of resettlement, refugees in need of resettlement around the world is at an extraordinarily high number, and Canada needs to do more to be responsive to them, and also to be responding in emergency situations in an equitable way. That would include emergencies in Africa, for example, which have always been neglected.
Yeah, so hence the immigration levels numbers need to be adjusted accordingly. Otherwise, you will be robbing Peter to pay Paul. Did I interpret that correctly?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, on a similar vein, with respect to regularizing people, what suggestions do you have for the government to streamline that process? Because right now the red tape is very burdensome. And for people, for example, Ms. Long, whose work permit is expired and because they couldn't get it renewed in time, should the government just streamline those individuals and to regularize their process and do away with some of the red tape to save work and efficiency and maximize efficiency within IRCC? Ms. Long and then Ms. Dench.
Yes, absolutely. Right now, we have some very stringent timelines. For example, 90 days only to restore your status. When some people, they didn't get their decisions back, or they may have submitted something and it was returned after 90 days. So that it makes things impossible for them to do so. There are so many easy ways that we can allow people to gain their status back.
Ms. Dench?
Yeah, I would say that obviously digital offers the opportunity to do things much more quickly and efficiently, but we haven't necessarily seen that paying off. And instead, what we see is that more and more the applicants have the burden of doing all the paperwork, often in online tools that are very difficult to use. And then the processing times don't seem to improve as a result. So we don't seem to be benefiting as fully as we would expect.
One of the witnesses, Ms. Delage, actually at a previous meeting, suggested that to streamline the process may well mean that, there could be situations where some people would be able to get through, without having met all the requirements. But for the purpose of trying to streamline the process, that she thought that it was worth the risk as long as criminality is not an issue. Would you agree with that, Ms. Long and then Ms. Dench?
Yes, absolutely. We have the mechanism of the temporary resident permits right now to allow people to write their status. The problem is right now to apply for temporary resident permits, it's 2 to 3 years
Sorry
or more.
for interrupting, Ms. Long. Time is up for Ms. Kwan. We can come back in the next round of questioning. We will will now proceed to our second round. Ms. Rempel Garner, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you. I'll continue my line of questioning with Ms. Dench. One of the potential avenues that was suggested for the government to have a regularization program was to include essentially amnesty for refugee applications that may have been denied. Does your organization support that recommendation?
Well, we are supporting a broad regularization. And something also that takes into account the various circumstances. So a particular category of people of concern to us and has long been of concern is people whose refugee claim may have been denied, but who have remained in Canada because the situation in their home country is so bad that Canada does not deport them. So they remain in Canada, and we think that there should be an expedited way for them to get permanent residence.
But going back, so taking out the categorization or the requirement of refugee claims that have been denied, but the applicant would have a moratorium due to the situation in the country. If our nation determines that it's safe for someone to return to their country and a refugee claim has been denied, is your organization supporting an amnesty or regularization for that class of persons?
We don't have a recommendation specifically on that point, no. We have broader point around having broad regularization.
I guess asked another way, if the government announced regularizations for refugee applications that have been denied, do you think that that would perhaps create a pull factor into Canada for refugee claims that would fall into a similar category?
I think it would depend how it was framed. If it was a time-specific one, sometimes programs are saying you have to have been in the country by such a date to benefit, and then obviously it doesn't create so much of a pull factor.
If that did happen, is your organization recommending that the refugee review process going forward be changed to sort of extend that type of regularization into the system in general, long-term?
Well, as I say, our recommendations are not really related specifically to refugee claimants, but more to the various different circumstances in which people find themselves in Canada. And we think it's good to have an ongoing situation so we don't keep on creating situations where people remain here for many, many years without status.
I guess I'll just be blunt in where I'm coming from. I do think that the government has failed to provide pathways to permanent residency for classes like temporary foreign workers. I find the name of that program pejorative in its nature. I am worried that if the government talks about, quote, regularization or amnesty for refugee claimants whose claims have been denied and our country finds it safe for them to return to their house, that this will become a very politically polarizing issue. And the point of the program and some of the objectives that your organization is working on might become very politically polarized. So I think it's important for organizations like yourself to have a clear position on this issue. And I'm just trying to give you an opportunity to avail yourself of a clear position in that regard.
Well, as I said, our position is outlined in the submission that we have provided and that's available online.
So does your organization support amnesty for refugee applications that have been denied where Canada has determined that it is safe for them to return to their home country?
Well, there could be many reasons why somebody might have been denied refugee status, but maybe benefit. Sometimes there are gender-based reasons, for example, women who have not being able to bring forward the gender-based aspects in the refugee claim.
Isn't that a deficiency with the refugee selection review process as opposed to a rationale for amnesty?
Well, there are many deficiencies in the refugee determination system, and we would also like to see the refugee determination system reformed so that there were fewer people falling through the cracks. Is that
perhaps a better route than saying that civil society and politicians should be declaring amnesty on groups that public servants have deemed to have on applications rejected?
We didn't say that.
Okay, well, kind of did. And I think it's important for organizations such as yourself that have, a big footprint in this space to be clear on this issue. I certainly wouldn't like to have us sitting here in a big political fight when refugees' lives and perceptions are at stake. So at the close of my time, I would just, for the record, express concern, and particularly for this committee on how it undertakes a recommendation in this regard. Thank you.
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Rempel-Garner. Time is up. We will now proceed to Ms. Diab. Ms. Diab, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And first, let me welcome all three witnesses to our committee where we're continuing to study backlogs and processing time for all immigration streams. Let me start off with Ms. Dench. On behalf of the Canadian Council of Refugees, a brief was submitted, and I actually read it with a lot of interest because I on my provincial side worked quite a bit with refugees as well as all immigration streams, but and it was entitled "Accepted Refugees on Hold and Separated from Their Families," and where you urged the minister to strengthen family reunification by introducing electronic applications, specifically suggesting that refugee family reunification and not only family class should have electronic applications. So let me specifically ask, in your opinion, should IRCC proceed with electronic applications for refugees that seek family reunification? And do you believe that the electronic applications would allow for a more speedily processed, and, would they be processed, do you think, more speedily? And what about resources to complete these forms and permit separated families to have more direct channels of communications with IRCC officials?
Well, thank you for the question. In terms of family reunification for refugees, we have worked with the department on various mechanisms to try to speed up the processing. One of the things that they've been looking at is potentially processing in Canada, along the lines of what Ms. Long was talking about also. But the problem, which is what we were highlighting in our brief, is that you can have efficient processing, but if the levels prevent people from being landed, it doesn't matter how efficient your processing is, they're still going to wait till next year. And that's what happens. If the levels are set for only 24,500 this year, once they've landed that number of people, they're not going to process anymore until the next year. So the levels is the key issue there. In terms of the second point, in terms of having some way to talk to somebody, that is a crying need. We are constantly hearing from people where the thing seems to have got lost somewhere. It's incomprehensible why it's not moving forward in the correct way, or there's been some sort of misunderstanding. And yet it's so difficult to speak to anybody in the immigration department.
So let me bring you back to family reunification. The brief obviously talks about a number of mothers not being united with their children. That is a case with refugees, but also other people that are in Canada that are awaiting being processing. I guess the question that I'm trying to ask is, and I'm thinking you're going to say they should all be treated the same, I guess, regardless of the reason or how they got into Canada, whether it's refugee claimant or a temporary resident, or regardless of the stream they came in, to put family reunification in terms of processing times all at an equal level. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think part of what we're saying is that refugee families should not be treated worse than families that are coming through the family class. And that is currently the case, where there are processing standards for family class, but there are none for refugee family reunification. And that has consequences and leads to longer delays.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Long, let me ask you. You practiced law for a long time and have appeared in front of, I think, this committee before as well. Are you seeing any improvements?
Improvements in processing times? Not currently. Currently, everything is backlogged. I think the improvements in being online is an improvement from before.
And with respect to the clients that you have served, I guess, what's the most important recommendation that you would like to see come out of this report?
I think one is the standards for the criteria with regard to how officers are evaluating overseas applications for temporary resident. There's too much discretion. There's not enough standard operating guidelines for the workers. The second
Sorry
one.
for interrupting, Ms. Long. Time is up for Ms. Diab.
Thank you very much.
We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel-Decep for 2.5 minutes. Mr. Brunel-Decep, you will have 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quickly, you are experts working on the field, and it's our work as politicians to listen to you and to make sure that our report will reflect what you've said. I'd like to hear you speak to the idea of creating an ombudsman position for immigration. This idea has been circulating. Not everyone agrees with the idea. I'd like to have the opinion of our three witnesses on this, starting with Mrs. Roman. No. Madam Chair, can we start my timer again? There seems to be an interpretation issue. The creation of an ombudsman or ombudsman position at immigration. What's your opinion on that? The interpretation's not working, Madam Chair? Can we make sure that it's working? Well, I think that we'll start from the beginning. My time should start from the beginning because she didn't hear my question. Testing 1, 2. This is the interpreter. Testing 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Is the interpretation working? Testing 1, 2, 3. One moment, please, Madam Chair. We're checking something in the room. Hang on, please. Is it working now for you, Mrs. Roman? Okay. So my time is starting now. I would like to have your opinion, Mrs. Roman, on the proposal that some people are making, that is to create an ombudsman position for immigration.
I think it's a very new approach. I do not have experience with that, so I'm not able to.
Merci. Madame Long.
Wonderful. Mrs. Long, do you have an opinion on the creation of an ombudsman position?
I think it would be good if they had any power, and they would certainly have to have a large capacity to be an ombudsman. And you know, because right now I think most MPs are sort of acting in that role where people are going to MPs to ask for them to speak on, and I certainly think if as long as there's enough capacity.
Ça dépend.
Yes, so it would depend what type of ombudsman office would be created. Mrs. Dench, I would like to have your opinion on this. Yes, thank you. I'll second Mrs. Long's point of view. It would be very important, but it would be absolutely flooded by complaints. So it would have to be well structured and have capacity, and not to have the same type of ombudsman office as what we have, for example, for foreign Canadian businesses. I think that no one wants that in immigration. You spoke, Mrs. Long, you talk about Chinook. In your opinion, should we have a moratorium on Chinook in order to review if it's really working or if it's creating more problems? Shouldn't we have a moratorium on the use of Chinook as long as we haven't shed any light on what's happening with this program?
Right now, the amount of refusals that are coming out and the type of refusals just does not make sense. You are playing with people's lives in deciding their immigration applications, and we can't do that.
Avez-vous l'impression?
Do you have the impression that since the implementation of Chinook, the refusal rate, well, it's gone up, it's crystallized perhaps? It seems that right now it's almost an AI system that has crystallized and amplified the decisions.
Yes, when a refusal rate, and I think, sorry, I'm just hearing a big echo.
You just have 5 seconds.
Hello? Okay, yes. When a refusal rate goes up, I've seen statistics on refusal rates going from 30 or 40% up to 60%. That's untenable.
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Long. Time is up for Mr. Brunel Desepp. We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan for 2.5 minutes. Ms. Kwan, you will have 2.5 minutes. You can please begin.
I'll just quickly let Ms. Long finish her thought, and then I want Ms. Dench to answer that last question that I put to her.
Yes, when refusal rates go up like that, it's untenable, and we certainly need to take a further look at the system before we implement it throughout immigration.
Thank you. Ms. Dench?
Sorry, I'll need a reminder of the question.
Okay, my question was about with the regularization process to streamline the red tape. It may mean that the government may need to forego some of the stringent eligibilities. For example, it was put to us from a previous witness that some people may not be able to pass, let's say, a language test to the high level that the government's required, that we should forego that in order to streamline the processing. Is that something that you would support for the government to look at those kinds of measures to streamline the process?
Well, I think there's two ways in which things can be streamlined. One is in terms of the criteria, and certainly things like language testing or proof of language is a big barrier for people. Often people actually do speak English or French, but it's hard for them to provide the proof. The second thing is around the kinds of documentation that people require and the ways in which they're sort of second guessing. So we see this, for example, in the refugee family unification, where somebody who has always declared that they have a spouse all the way through, they have documentation for it, and yet still the immigration department is asking them for all kinds of extra paperwork and justifications and so on, which slows down the process and is extremely burdensome for people.
Thank you. On processing delays, oftentimes the government will make an announcement and say that going forward, these people or these applications will meet the processing standards, but yet they don't put resources into processing the people that's already in the queue and are delayed. Do you think the government should establish a separate process to ensure that those that are in the queue are also processed and not just sitting gathering dust? Ms. Long?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we're supposed to follow a first come, first serve situation, and it becomes really unfair when people are waiting for 3 years for an application to be decided, and then new people come in and their applications are decided in a few months.
Ms. Dench?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of frustration because people compare and they say, why is this person being processed ahead of me? And it's hard to understand why it isn't first in, first out, because with the digital tools, it should be easy for the immigration department to see which applications have been waiting the longest.
On digital tools, a lot of times...
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Kwan, time is up. With this, our first panel comes to an end, and on behalf of all the members of this committee, I want to thank all the 3 witnesses for appearing before the committee. If there is something which you would like to bring to committee's notice, you can always send a written submission to the clerk of the committee. So with that, I will suspend the meeting for a few minutes so that we can get the second panel on. Madam Clerk, if you can do the sound checks, and then we can begin. So the meeting is suspended. Thank you. panel. Thanks to all the witnesses for appearing before this committee. I would like to welcome Mr. Umar Khayyam, a lawyer from Omni Law Professional Corporation, joining us by video conference. We are also joined by Roger Ray, Director for Registered Immigration Consultant, Regency Immigration Solutions. And from the same organization, we are also joined by Sherwin Madani. Our third witness for today is Savasha Shakarian, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Attorney, Shakarian Law Professional Corporation. Welcome again. All the witnesses will have 5 minutes for their opening remarks. We will start with Mr. Khayyam. Mr. Khayyam, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Omar Khayyam. I'm an immigration lawyer in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I'd like to share some thoughts on the growing immigration backlog and possible recommendations. Immigration delays have direct consequences on all areas of life for temporary residents. I'm going to give some examples of clients' experiences in the past week or two. I have a client right now who can't travel to his ailing father because IRCC has delayed issuing his COPR from the PR confirmation portal. And he's had to delay because he can't get his PR card to travel and return. I have another client whose federal court filing took a long time to even get approved, the initial filing, because of backlogs that are now occurring at the federal court. You know, health cards cannot be renewed when work permits are delayed. Others struggle even to get their first health card. I had a client who she was so sick and she failed repeatedly in getting a health card renewed. And I had another family where the parents had to remove their children from public school because the parents simply couldn't get their work permits approved in time. I have some clients who delay weddings in order to meet express entry scores, others that delay business startups until they become permanent residents, and others who, you know, they want to purchase a home in an expensive Canadian market, but they don't have their status. So some of them, they may go ahead and purchase it. Some of them will delay it. Ultimately, they'll end up paying more. It's a dehumanizing situation. People become file numbers and category types. In the media, we see something else, self-congratulation and smiles. My clients get a progress bar and they will repeatedly ask me what percentage is it at now? But they quickly learn it is misleading and a fictitious creation of IRCC to keep them placated. Immigration should be about new beginnings, new relationships, and fostering trust. The first lesson an immigrant learns is not to trust the Canadian government. As a lawyer, our caseloads have grown with the backlog. Clients are more frustrated than ever. With a program such as the TR to PR pathway, approving permanent residence in 3 months, well, established programs like the caregiver program can take 3 to 4 years. People don't know what to expect. Predictability is being eroded. So how can there be any certainty? I want to draw home those 3 points: certainty, predictability, and consistency, because these are crucial to the rule of law. And that applies to immigration. It's not just a government program, it's part of the legal system in Canada. My suggestions are to approach this 2.7 million backlog problem differently. I don't think you can get out of this problem with the same thinking that got you into it. Some suggestions may be more drastic, but I'm only offering some food for thought. Our criminal justice system sees 2 million arrests a year. We can maybe learn a thing or two from this area of law. When I worked in legal aid, I noticed that when they could not handle the caseloads, they would outsource to the private bar to have lawyers deal with certain cases. Maybe in immigration, we can outsource some work to lawyers to handle parts of the visa processing on the front end that are not crucial to the decision, to at least lighten the load for visa officers who will ultimately be making the final decision. Some provincial courts have weekend programs where a judge and a prosecutor and a private bar lawyer will come in on the weekend to lessen the load for the coming week. Can the backlog be solved in a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday schedule? I think IRCC should use the resources they have and and offer incentives to experienced officers to work longer hours and into the weekend at times. There's been some suggestions about, ramming people through and approving a number of people en masse. I think a controlled lottery of approving low-risk applicants, maybe 1% to 2%, may solve the problem short term, but it would put strain on other areas. I can maybe discuss a little bit more about that later, but I think you need to consider that the unintended consequences that can happen when we take some of these unpredictable measures. Okay, I don't have concrete solutions, but I can only suggest the existing problems be looked at differently. There's one thing I was looking at. I don't know how much time do I have to get into this.
Your time is up, Mr. Khayam.
Okay.
Okay, you'll get an opportunity when we go into the round of questioning. Thank you, Mr. Khayam. We will now proceed to Mr. Ray. Mr. Ray, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. And Mr. Ray is representing Regency Immigration Solutions.
Committee for inviting us to speak on the current problem with application backlogs and processing times. I'm a former CBSA officer who worked at the Pacific Border Crossing in Surrey, British Columbia from 2007 to 2012. From 2012 to the present, I am the owner and director at Regency Immigration Solutions, located in Surrey, British Columbia. I'm also a registered Canadian immigration consultant. To my right is my associate, Mr. Shervin Madani. You want to?
My name is Shervin Madani. I used to be also a former CBSA officer. I had pretty much the same career path as Mr. Rai, 2007 to 2012 with Canada Border Service Agency at the land border, and from 2012 to present as an associate with Regency Immigration.
So I've watched some of the committee's previous meetings regarding these issues, and therefore I'll try not to repeat the issues and hardships identified by some of the other witnesses. My previous experience as a Border Services Officer for 5 years, as well as my current occupation as an RCIC for the past 10 years, has provided me with some unique insights on how the application process works and some ideas we can implement or at least study that could significantly reduce the application backlog, as well as prevent a further workload from accumulating. Before I address the areas that we have identified that could be looked at, I would just like to take a minute to stress the urgency of dealing with this problem. As I don't have time to go over all the problems and negative impacts of this backlog, I would just like you to consider what I think is the most important issue facing our country today, which is the economy. In my 15 years of working in the immigration field, I have never seen a shortage of workers like we face today. It is my firm belief if this issue is not immediately addressed, we face a real prospect of some sort of economic collapse and the nullification of any post-COVID recovery efforts. From small businesses to large corporations, the desperation for workers has never been so great, and if we don't find a solution fast, we will soon be past the point of no return. So we've identified a few problems that we think if we can solve them quickly, it will reduce this backlog significantly. Number one, we see the training with inland and overseas officers. There's a lack of knowledge of program requirements. Officers are often asking for irrelevant documents, and as I think some of the other witnesses have testified to earlier, there's a lot of unjustified refusals of applications. The result is we have to sometimes put in additional applications, either that or go to MP inquiries or look for judicial review. At the port of entry, Canada Border Services is the agency that processes many applications for people coming into the country. They have a memorandum of understanding with IRCC, and I feel that the job that they're doing at this time is not either it's not working well, or there needs to be some sort of changes made, because I think a lot of the officers are not happy with processing immigration at the border. So we can go into that a little bit more, because Shervin and I have experienced that firsthand. Some of the solutions that we've looked at here is an online portal for reconsideration of applications, but we would have to have very specific criteria on the types of files and the issues that will be reconsidered. CIC inland offices or port of entries processing work permit extensions, study permit extensions, work permits and study permits in the way that it was done prior to 2004. That's when the amalgamation took place between CBSA and CIC. And since that time, a lot of issues at the port of entry have happened that I think if we went back to the previous way, I know it's asking a lot, but I think we could solve a lot of the problems. And then if we have a separate, if we separate the backlog from the current new files, set a firm date, all applications after this date should be processed with the new technologies and systems. And then we'd have to delegate a team of experts to just work on just the backlog alone. The processing of these backlog files and new applications to be categorized on how complicated the file is. For example, a visitor extension is something very easily done. You can do it at the border, you can do it online, you don't need to have it in a queue for 6 months. If you just sort out the high-risk files from the low-risk files, we can have those files processed very quickly, eliminate the ones that we don't need to spend a lot of time on, and then the ones that do need more work, they can have the higher experienced officers working on those. Another one that we've considered is the Super Visa program that has been implemented for parents and grandparents. A lot of those people are working here, and why not have them introduced into the workforce properly, give them a work permit.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Ray.
Okay.
Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you for
your time
yeah.
is up.
Thank you.
You will get an opportunity to talk further when we get into round of questioning.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed to Mr. Shakarian, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Attorney from Shakarian Law Professional Corporation. Mr. Shakarian, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please begin.
Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee, hello and good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to appear today. Backlogs and delays are not new to our immigration system. They have always been parts of it. And we have tried many things to solve the problem, from terminating 300,000 skilled worker application back in 2012 with no notice, no explanation, to creating the new express entry system in 2015 with the sole promise of eliminating backlog, which itself is now one of the main contributors to the problem. We have committed billions and have recently committed millions more to solving this problem, but it just keeps on getting worse. As a lawyer, I was trained to think within the limits of precedent. I was trained to think within the limits of what has been done before me. I was trained to think within the limits of a box. But I was an engineer long before I became a lawyer. And as an engineer, I was trained to approach old problems in entirely new ways. As an engineer, I was trained to understand that there is no box. And today, I'd like to encourage you to think about this problem anew, to step back, to zoom out, and rethink the big picture. Backlog is essentially a collection of tasks required to achieve a larger strategic plan. In other words, fix your strategy, fix your backlog. What is our immigration strategy? Today, it has been reduced to numbers. Just look at our official rhetoric. Look at our official announcements. In 2021, for example, we celebrated exceeding our target of 401,000 new permanent residents despite COVID. Our executives shook hands and took pride in being confident in setting even higher targets for the years to come. Of course, under this strategy, backlog isn't even a problem. The incumbent minister himself admitted so in delivering his keynote speech at the CBA Immigration Law Conference back in June when he said, backlog is a good thing. It shows Canada is in high demand. But Madam Chair, members of the committee, numbers don't make the future of our country. Our future does not depend on how many people we admit, but on who we admit and how we treat them, how we set them up to integrate and succeed in our country. How do we want to grow our Canadian family? Do we want world-class artists, athletes, and cultural figures who can expand our national horizon and inspire us to become the leader of the free world? No, because even if you have multiple Olympic medals, Academy Awards, and accolades and recognitions, you still need to submit tens of irrelevant documents, wait 41 months with only a 17% chance of success under the federal self-employed program. While you can choose the United States, show only your internationally recognized awards and get approved in less than a year. Business Development Bank of Canada deems us a nation of entrepreneurs. It claims that our economy is unequivocally dependent on small and mid-sized businesses. SMEs account for 90% of all private sector jobs and 55% of our GDP. Yet, our only other federal program targeting entrepreneurs is the Startup Visa program that has a backlog of more than 6,000 applications with processing times well more than 32 months. This is a joke for time-sensitive and incredibly risky, innovative ventures who we want to come to Canada and become the next Shopify, the next Google, the next Facebook. No wonder passport shoppers are way more interested in this program than genuine entrepreneurs. On the provincial side, things are not any better. Look at our most popular, populous, and economically prosperous province of Ontario. Its an entrepreneur program has had only 2 nominations in the 7 years since its inception. Things are even worse with our family reunification and humanitarian programs. Madam Chair, and members of the committee, backlog is a product of our immigration strategy, and our immigration strategy must be a function of who Canada is and who Canada wants to become. It takes more than just one ministry in the government. It even takes more than the government, the entire government itself. It takes all Canadians. Therefore, I recommend that Parliament legislates to mandate IRCC to institutionalize public participation in its policy making, such that civil society and all other stakeholders can effectively be engaged in sourcing ideas, co-creating solutions, and tackling complex policy problems like our current backlog. I further recommend that in the interim, processing of certain immigration applications be outsourced to certain Canadian professionals under well-defined public-private collaboration frameworks and robustly monitored service contracts. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, now we will go into our round of questioning, and we will start our first round with Mr. Kimmick. Mr. Kimmick, you can please begin. You will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, my question will be to Mr. Shakarian. That was just a breath of fresh air. Thank you, sir, for saying all the things I've been thinking for several years now. You talked about, you talked basically like an engineer, saying there is no box, and that we should rethink the way we do things. And I was going through the departmental plan and comparing past results to current results. And you talked about the targets, that we have an immigration system solely based around targets, not results. And I wonder if you could explain this from an engineer's point of view. If you pour in 30% more people, so the department has grown since 2016 by 30%, more people doing more work, all the while the backlogs have grown more and more and more. What would you make of it?
By adding more people to the department? Are we expecting that the processing times would be better? This department is a black box. We don't know how it works. We don't know how it operates. I mean, as a lawyer, we file ATIP after ATIP just to get the most basic information. We don't know. The most recent thing that we know based on LexBase is that the department back in COVID, it was at 80% capacity at best. So I don't know if they're hiring 30 new, if they're growing by 30%. I don't know how those resources are allocated.
Do you think that putting in even more people will help the department beat any of its targets, or actually reduce these
Not
backlogs?
necessarily. Not necessarily. It's not about quantity, it's about quality.
So on that quality question, throughout the federal government, throughout the public service right now, a lot of people are electing to work from home. There's a code in the public service that's code 699 as well. Do you think that's having an impact with people not having their files available? This happens to me quite often. I have a case file manager in my office, Suki, who handles these. And oftentimes she is told on the phone that particular person can't be in the office, doesn't have access to a paper file. And it seems like nobody can go into that person's office to scan the file or take a picture on the phone to send it to another visa officer to continue the processing. How often does that happen to you?
That happens every day. I mean, we don't know now, but my colleagues you've heard testimony after testimony in this very committee. And we said back in COVID, officers should have been essential workers. They just left. I have a startup visa application. We submitted on paper, and then a year and a half, we don't even have an acknowledgement. This is not respectful to those people that we want to become the future of Canada. So this is actually happened in the ground. We don't know if it's still happening.
So the backlogs are also causing officers to sometimes not process files of deserving individuals who are fleeing countries with horrible human rights records. And I'm going to think of the country of Iran. I think you're very familiar with it. I have a lot of Kurdish friends from Rojhelat who I file a lot of access to information requests on their behalf for their files. You've said before that Canada has laid the red carpet for embezzlers like Kavari and torturers like the ex-police chief of Talay, while we're also refusing 70% of its students and imposing sanctions on persons and entities with no interest in Canadians. I think I saw it on your LinkedIn. I liked it so much that I kept it. I entirely agree with you. What more do you think Canada could do to make sure these types of individuals aren't allowed to come to Canada, and that we do right by Canadians with Iranian heritage, with Kurdish heritage, who see this going on? And I get sent messages almost every single week of people telling me so-and-so from Sanandaj or Mahabad or Kermanshah is being allowed into the country, but they have links to the regime, and they're intimidating people once they get here, or intimidating the families who are back in their countries of origin, and they don't feel safe in the Canada that they call home.
I agree. To me, integrity is when you say something, you got to abide by it. And I don't see it in the treatment that we have to what's happening in Iran right now. We allow people who don't deserve it, and then here's the double standard that we have. Ukraine happens, Afghanistan happens, and Iran happens. With Iran, we're saying, oh, we added some names to some lists that we're not allowing people to come into this country, that they never even thought about coming to this country to begin with. Instead, we could have said, hey, we're going to lay a red carpet for whoever is on the streets and doing protests. We let you to come here, be in a free country, you have the media, talk to the media, and cause some change to that country. So instead, we're doing something that I don't think has any benefit.
Madam Chair, how much time do I have?
You have 1.5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Shakarian, you also talked about the backlog for entrepreneurs, people who want to come to this country and invest in our economy, create more jobs. That was the experience of my family when we came here. My family wanted to give back. My mother started a business. It was very simple, just commercial cleaning of homes and commercial cleaning of restaurants. You talked about the 42-month wait time. My staff often have to go online and check what the wait time is before we take on a case file to see if we can reasonably actually fix the problems people have. How often do you actually refuse people and say, like, this wait time is just too long, you're never going to get a response in time for a marriage or a birth of someone, or you're not going to be able to reconstitute your family? How often does that happen to you?
For my practice, we focus on business immigration a lot, and that's the biggest part of our business. And when you're a business person, you accumulate wealth, you have expertise, you want to take it to a new home, and we treat you the way we treat you. It has happening in the last year. We had 3 clients who turned to Australia to take their businesses to Australia because they have a much easier and much more friendly system for entrepreneurs. Our immigration system is not entrepreneur friendly, despite the statistics that I gave you. BDC deems us a nation of entrepreneurs, and yet look at how we treat them.
Thank you.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. We will now proceed to Mr. Ali. Mr. Ali, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin. We can't hear you, Mr. Ali. Are you? Can you unmute yourself? Is the button on your
Hello?
mic? Yes,
Can
we
you
can
hear
hear
me?
you now.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes, please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank all the witnesses for taking the time to give us the benefit of their knowledge and experience. Mr. Rai, you talked about work permit and super visa applicants. Could you please expand on your suggestion about work permit and successful super visa applicants, please?
We do a lot of super visas for families. The issue is, I believe, and I don't have the obviously the resources to research this, but I believe a lot of them are already working. The parents come in, the families are usually, first, like the young families, they need help economically. The parents are going and working in farms, which is labor work, and it's basically unregulated. I think it's very important that if they're already coming in, we be practical. We can either take an enforcement action against them, or we take a practical thing and say, listen, we know you guys are probably working. They're already been, they got their own private insurance when they come in. We have the ability just to say, if you do want to work, we'll issue you a work permit. In that way, they're, first of all, contributing back to the economy. They're being tracked who's doing this. And, right now, in terms of the shortage, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't implement that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rai. Some of the witnesses talked about longer processing time for the applicants who apply from certain countries and regions and processed at a certain visa offices. Since you've been in this industry for a long time, in your experience, can you explore or educate us which immigration streams and which regions are subject to longest waiting time? A, and B, in your opinion, how could Immigration and Refugee and Citizenship Canada can improve processing time in those visa offices?
Sure, I'd like to defer to my associate, Mr. Madani here. He's probably has more expertise in that field.
Sure. I deal with quite a few different offices. I have a lot of clients from Brazil, from Iran, from India. So our office deals with variety of, like I said, it's not just limited to a certain country. Currently, just to give you an example, Iran, a work permit, typically about a year without any answers, okay? Brazil, which was very fast at one point in time, you're looking even under certain streams where the government had committed to do 15 days work permits, such as Global Talent Stream. You're looking at about 16 weeks right now. Okay, so this is IT shortages. From India, I have seen usually about the fastest we had recently was about 6 months to 8 months. Okay, so these are overseas. Now, the overseas offices, they're dealing with a lot of different cases as well, such as sponsorships. Work permit applications, in a lot of cases, there is ways with the current technologies that we have right now that CIC is implementing, there is ways to reduce the backlogs, not only from within Canada, but also that a lot of these work permits are actually decided here in Canada. Give you a very good example, extensions for work permits. It doesn't need to be a very lengthy process. If the labor market is there, we have the technology, such when we did when the visa applications for Ukraine came out, it's very minimal documentation requirements. You get the visa. Why can't it be done with a with a work permit extension where somebody's already working for somebody, they have the LMIA renewed? This can be very much be an automated system where it frees up officers' time to actually look at complex cases, and they can be actually done here within Canada. Like it said, the legislation already allows that. Why does a work permit have to go overseas? We're already dealing with sponsorships overseas. We have the resources here. If there is places that you can go actually to get work permits where you're already in Canada. If I have a place where I can make an appointment to get a work permit, that frees up officers' time to look for at these applications that are overseas to expedite processing. No employer is willing to wait for a year to get their employees into Canada while they're suffering labor shortages. It's just unrealistic, whether they're from Iran, whether they're from India, or whether they're from Brazil.
Do you think that the region mostly face the same challenges, or for those ones you just mentioned, face delays for totally different reasons? I'm wondering if you would suggest a one-size-fits-all approach in every region, or if IRCC should be looking at region-specific solutions.
Well, work permits, like I said, if you're doing labor market work permits, simplistic cases where there is cases where the government has already, Service Canada has approved the employer, saying this employer is eligible to bring somebody. These are actually not, and the document requirements are very straightforward, where the officers are given straight directions about these are the documents that you should request and not delay other things by requesting additional. So those processes can be done in Canada. It doesn't need to be overseas. So it can...
Okay, I'm sorry, my question was a little bit different. Can I ask Mr. Khayyam, because I have a limited time. Mr. Khayyam, can you have some thoughts on this same question, please?
Well, I think there was a witness who spoke earlier, Ms. Long, where, to build on Mr. Madani's point, doing it in Canada. The internet is essentially one big visa office.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Khayyam. Time is up for Mr. Ali, and I just want to remind all the members that all the questions should be directed through the chair. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Desep. Mr. Brunel Desep, you will have 6 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please begin.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to say that we've heard very good witnesses today. All testimonies were very good, as well as the answers. Everything is relevant. We can see that people are really working on the field, and this is going to help us with our report. Mr. Shekarian, you said that targets are not going to help with the backlog. It's more a question of helping people settle here, how they are being accepted here. Do people make a link between the labor shortage and new residents? Of course, these people also need lodging. They need public services. They will eat. Is it really a solution to increase targets and think that everything is going to get better with labor shortage?
We give to IRCC goes to settlement programs. If you look at how they're spending it at GC Info Base, that's the website I looked at on how they're spending the money. But then at the same time, I'm just going to read you from a university study that went to the NGOs that are delivering these settlement programs on ground, and they're all saying that IRCC, when they consult with us, they have answered the question before and then they come to us. So there is no meaningful, collaboration between civil society and the government. And that is exactly what I'm asking for. You're spending most of your money on settlement. And what is settlement good for? Because whoever we bring to this country, we want to stay in this country. Right? Right now, our retention rate, 2 weeks ago, you heard testimony, 50% of people are leaving. We're doing something wrong. We are definitely doing something wrong. And we're spending most of our money on something that we should help people stay here, but nobody's consulting us, civil society or not consulted.
Justement, vous parlez.
You were talking about consultation earlier in your testimony. You also talked about the lack of transparency and communication with the department. How does that impact your work? How does that impact what we are studying here? That means backlogs.
In terms of my capacity as a lawyer, I'm like a mechanic, right? You give me the law, I want to apply it, and I want information. So when a client comes to me with a refusal, the first thing that I would do is file an ATIP, and then I have to wait months, and then I'll come knocking on your door. Hey, do a follow-up with IRCC. You have no luck. You heard this testimony from my colleague last week, Chantal Deloiche, that said the exact same thing. Transparency itself, yes, there are a lot of values with transparency, but transparency on its own is not something that we are after. Transparency is the very first thing that we need to do. When a system is transparent, I can look at it, I can analyze it, and I can make recommendations based on what I'm seeing. We are still at the transparency level. Testimony after testimony, just do a control F on whatever you have on paper, and you see how many times this issue has come up. Where are we right now?
Oui, OK.
Microphone, please. Microphone, please. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yes. We were talking about transparency. Some witnesses have suggested to register, to tape interviews. Do you think this is a good idea? Microphone. Okay.
Hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, taping interviews is definitely better than not taping them. Same again, my colleague who has much more experience than I have, I think she started practicing immigration law before I was even born, and that's what she said. Taping, there is no reason for not taping them. I'm referring to Mr. Deloiche's testimony.
Merci. Monsieur Rai, vous avez dit...
Mr. Ryan, you said that you were a border agent before working in immigration, so you have a fascinating expertise. Some people have told us, the union, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but I have a good memory, the border agent union in June or May publicly stated we have to help when there's an international crisis. For example, they were talking about the Ukraine crisis. We're prepared to help because we have some training in immigration. But the government did not call upon these people. It could have helped us At that time, what happened is a lot of IRCC agents were sent to deal with the Ukraine crisis. At the same time, we had people already with some training at border services that could have helped, and it might have improved the backlogs. What do you think about that?
So I would like to say that, there is some officers who have the knowledge to be able to help in that situation. It's not the majority of them. So you would have to see who would be willing to go to do that job. There's been a very big disconnect at the border since 2004 between what their role is. Mm-hmm. They've been given the role of being immigration officers as well as enforcement officers. Immigration is service related, for the most part.
À ce moment-là, est-ce que
30
ce serait...
seconds left.
So at that time, would extra training with, of course, extra financial compensation for these officers, wouldn't this be a good idea to help out the IRCC staff and that to ask them to do the work, yes, but to train them properly? What we have now is that we have all these entries in Quebec at the Roxham Road. 98% of asylum seekers are being dealt with by the RCMP. Only 2% go to the border services.
To Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for their presentation. I'd like to first ask Mr. Rai and his colleague who have CBSA experience. One of the things that actually a lot of my constituents are faced with delay in processing because of the criminality checks is stuck in the system. We have no way of trying to find out where it is at, and sometimes it's just stuck there. There's no information. Can you provide us any insight into that process within CBSA, and how can that be more transparent? Not trying to influence the decision, but just to get information on where things are at.
Sure. That's a very good question. Unfortunately, the government is very, very tight-lipped about this. And I can tell you when we were using previously as CBSA officers, when we were using the system about how to do security checks, it was very, very, back in the days they had this system, it was FOSS, F-O-S-S. It's kind of the same similar system about CAPES, where the global system entry that they put their files in there. For CBSA, when we had refugee claimants or we had typically on work permit application that show up at the border, this process is actually not done, the security checks. A lot of times you can ask the applicant to show up with a police certificate to satisfy yourself that they don't have any criminality, but the security check at itself is the government is very tight-lipped. Even at the officer level, there was 2 boxes that we had to click to ask for security checks. One was asking to CSIS, one was to RCMP, and then, there was a third one to go CBSA. But we, even as officers, we didn't know exactly how this process worked. Eventually, you would get an automated message on these ones saying security passed. So to shed any further lights on those, I couldn't tell you, especially for the PR process, what the background checks look like. But at the border, when somebody comes to do the work permit application, this is not actually part of the regular process. To the extent that you can go is a police certificate. And that should satisfy you about criminality, not security clearances. So, So there could be somebody, let's say, from a terrorist organization that show up, unless for some odd reason they show up in some sort of system that CBSA would have access to, you wouldn't actually know.
I see. Thank you very much for that information. It's interesting to know. Okay, now in terms of processing backlog, one of the issue that was raised, of course, is that oftentimes where the government will make an announcement and then they'll say going forward, these new applications will be processed within processing standards. But in the meantime, the people who are in the backlog are just stuck in the system, and often they're just sort of left languishing there. Mr. Rai, do you have any suggestions as to how the government should deal with the existing backlogs? And so take, for example, some witnesses have suggested that the government should have 2 separate bodies to process new applications, but as well as having a body to process existing applications to clear the backlog?
Yeah, I think I touched upon this a little bit in my opening. Definitely, we need to have, I wouldn't say two separate bodies, but two maybe teams within the same organization. That one is, if there's no point in trying to reduce a backlog if you're going to keep having more applications come in and they're going to keep piling up. So let this one team come up with a new criteria for assessing files and then have them deal with the new stuff. And then when it comes to the existing backlog, have the second team of more experienced officers, because usually some of those backlogs are due to like complicated cases, so the file gets stuck in limbo. So have the more experienced officers, a special task force working on those specific cases just to clear the backlog. Shervin has a good example. He actually used to work for CRA also, and they had a similar problem. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
This is actually, this process is actually, I know it's not service, as far as it comes, it's not service standard friendly, because people say, well, this person's file got processed faster than mine, but there has to be at some stage some sacrifices made in order to be able to catch up. If I have a queue and there is stuff being added on to the back of it constantly, we're never going to be able to catch up. I have to take some of these one and put it in a bundle and say, hey, you know what? We are very sorry. We are going to get to you, and we're going to put this in as a priority, because we're going to dedicate officers to this backlog to make sure that it gets cleared. Right now, with what we are seeing, the time frames keep changing. TR to PR was supposed to be finishing by 2022. It moved to 2023. Now it's all of a sudden it's 2024. So there is no consistency, and this is what leads to frustration for people. The policies that are coming up sometimes they are so poorly designed. It shoots like immigration in the foot. Give you a perfect example. This 40-hour work for students. Sorry, I just want to give you a quick example.
Sorry, I'm quick, running out of time.
Yeah.
So maybe you can send in the examples to the clerk for distribution. But what I heard from Mr. Rai is that basically there should be two separate streams in terms of staffing to process these applications. Now, related to the processing of the applications, it really doesn't help unless if the immigration levels number are also adjusted to accommodate it. So
sorry for interrupting, Ms. Kwan. Your time is up. We will now proceed to our second round, and we will have Mr. Reddycop. Mr. Reddycop, you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to ask Mr. Khayyam, some witnesses have suggested that the department mass approve whole categories of low-risk applications. We talked about that today. The suggestion is that this would reduce our backlog with very minimal risk to Canada. Now, in your opening remarks, you talked briefly about this, and I heard you say the words unintended consequences, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this.
Well, that's right. If we think about it, if we were going to mass approve a number of applications, we'd have to consider what would happen. I think something like that would only cause more uncertainty and unpredictability in the system and lead to unanticipated consequences. So let's say 2.7 million applications got approved overnight. Well, then the second question is, how are you going to issue all those PR cards, those citizenship certificates, and those permits? How are you going to print them off so quickly? And then let's say those permanent residents want to travel home to visit their family, then you're going to have a jam at the airport, and then you're going to have another traffic jam at the airport for PR landings. So those unintended consequences have to be considered. That's why predictability and certainty and consistency, I think those are important values in the rule of law. I think what we should do is work backwards. What is the top speed that we can approve applications at? How many work permits can be approved? How fast? Or how many PR cards or citizenship certificates can be issued per year, per month, per week, per day, and per hour? And then working backwards from there and setting a target, that would make sense. What's the Donovan Bailey of the system, right? Of the immigration system? How fast can we go? And then we figure out, well, how can we be Terry Fox at the same time and find a middle ground? Maybe 60% of that our top speed. Once we know those types of things, I think it's a little bit easier to understand what unanticipated consequences are going to be. Ramming people through, that could work, right? But
that's good. Mr. Shakarian, just wondering if you have any additional or different thoughts on that.
I think it would send a wrong message. Let's just create a lottery and be proud of it. U.S. had lotteries, and they were straightforward about it. Imagine you're applying to Canada today, and then you realize if you've done it 6 months ago, you would have gotten in with no trouble.
So I just want to switch gears a little bit and speak about the judicial review process. Other witnesses have spoken about this, and people say there needs to be something done. You guys are lawyers. I'm curious of your thoughts. Some have suggested scrapping it altogether in favor of Immigration Canada working more cooperatively, and others say that IRCC seems incapable of being cooperative, and maybe we need a judge to get through this. I'd like to see a report in this recommendation about the judicial review process. So, Mr. Kayam, do you agree with those who say scrap the process, or should we keep it, or do you believe there's room for improvement?
We should not scrap it at all. I think it's crucial to the rule of law. My clients, when they don't know what else to do, then we start talking about federal court. Yes, sometimes the cost can be prohibitive, but the cost comes in a number of ways, right? So I think there needs to be some redress that foreign nationals can seek, and I think that's the purpose of having a judge. So I don't think we should scrap it. If we did scrap it, where else are they going to turn to? Who else are they going to go to?
Did you have thoughts on that?
Mr. Kayam, on that point.
Excellent. With all the changes that have been attempted and the mess that we have in IRCC, Mr. Kayam, do you have any confidence that IRCC can actually implement some of...
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Redekop. Your time is up. We will now proceed to Mr. El-Khouri. Mr. El-Khouri, you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to our witnesses. Thank you for testifying before our committee. My first question is for Mr. Rai. Mr. Rai, IRCC uses advanced analytics to process visitors' visa and to go through study permits and work permits, as well as sponsorship requests for spouses. Are you able to specify to us the benefits of these tools, the benefits on those who are making the requests?
Without having knowledge of what kind of algorithm they're using to make these decisions, it's very hard to say, is it just something like a generic a form that they go through, or are they actually using some sort of AI to make these decisions? So it's very hard to answer that question without having more specific knowledge, which I don't have on that subject. I'm sorry.
Mr. Shakarian, according to your knowledge of the situation and according to your experience as a lawyer in this field, what is your opinion as to online applications? Do you think this would help to speed up requests being made?
Of course. It's a good thing. We should have done it a long time ago. But then it's one thing to launch an MVP, most viable product, and not have resources be able to back up all the troubleshooting and everything that can go wrong with the system, than not doing it. So doing everything online is, of course, we have to do it, but we have to make sure that we dedicate enough resources to this system to troubleshoot it. Because look at it, right now all the applications are online. IRCC is pushing for it, but just look at the CPA listserv or look at CLAW listserv. There is everyday frustration from many lawyers across this country saying, hey, this portal doesn't work, that doesn't work, this error message, I don't know what to do with it. And nobody's responsive.
Thank you. Monsieur Madani.
Mr. Madani, what about choosing applicants according to economic needs of a country? Are you able to tell us more on this subject? What do you think about that?
the right to choose the candidates that desire for their economy. We have currently a huge pool in Canada that is starting to leave because of the restrictions of express entry, because of the restriction that they don't qualify for permanent residency. IRCC has the tools to make this happen for the people that are here, that have been established here, that have placed roots here. Students, there could be easy programs implemented for them to become permanent residents. People who have work experience here in Canada, 1 year work experience. The express entry can be easily manipulated for these people to become permanent residents here in Canada. But we are not using the existing tools that we have. We are just, at this stage, we are just trying to advertise that Canada is the best. Everybody knows that. People want to come here. But when they get here, we have to have options for them to stay here for permanent, whether they are low-skilled workers, whether they're skilled, high-skilled workers. These people deserve a chance to be part of our fabric, part of our society, because they contribute. Sometimes it's non-relevant when we bring in people who don't have any connections to this country.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up for Mr. Al-Khoury. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Decep for 2 minutes. Mr. Brunel Decep, you will have 2 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, I would like to highlight the quality of the witnesses here today for 2 hours. Mr. Kayam, we haven't spoken yet. If you had one priority, one recommendation that you could insert into our report, what would it be following the study that we're doing? What would be your number one recommendation?
Thank you for your question. I can only suggest that the existing problem be looked at differently. Lately, I was looking at how cities manage traffic flows, and there's a whole branch of mathematics that look at this, and they observe that adding lanes to a highway increases traffic congestion. It's called Brace's paradox. I'll send in the more details to the clerk. So, but when we added the TR to PR pathway, we added another lane, and we have almost 80 programs in Canada, and congestion seems to be increasing. And so I think more people want to pull onto the highway ramp, and the backlog seems to have grown very quickly after some of these programs came into being. Now, the counterpart for that paradox, it's called Brace's paradox, is that removing a main road could result in speeding up the traffic flow. That doesn't really make sense. It sounds counterintuitive, but that seems to be what's happened in a number of cities. So maybe we can think about that and, looking at the problem through that lens. So what would be the main road? I don't want to say what that could be, but I think that could require some thought. What would happen? I think work permits are probably the biggest road, but maybe it could be express entry. So maybe eliminating a category for a short period, or converting a category into another program, change the size of the vehicle, so to speak. Maybe that could have.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Kayam. Time is up for Mr. Brunel Decep.
Merci tout le monde.
We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan for 2 minutes. Ms. Kwan, you can please begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just want to go back to my last question to Mr. Rai and his colleague. In order to facilitate processing in all the multiple different streams, what is also required would be adjustments to the immigration levels. And because sometimes without the levels numbers there, people's files just sit there and collect dust. Do you have any comments about adjusting the immigration levels numbers every time when measures are introduced and to also facilitate the process in the backlog?
I think this sort of will continue on from your answer from the previous question. Yeah?
So obviously, that's something that definitely needs to be implemented as well, to be adjusting the numbers as well. If you're capping things at, there is obviously the reasons why the government is capping these numbers. Are we saying we are not able to process enough applications? Is that why we have only 400,000 people per year? Is that what we are saying? Or do we have the capability to do up to 1 million people, but we just don't want to because there's not enough staff? So yes, I think those numbers should be increased to be able to facilitate, to be able to add additional routes for people that are here in Canada. We are, again, going back to the previous point I made, we have a huge pool of people already here. We are turning our backs on these people and they are leaving. They are leaving because they don't have path. And if we have increased numbers where we can actually add people, where they are qualified, then definitely it will help people.
Okay. Now, one of the issues in terms of the backlog and delays is this. IRCC often will process an application, and then someone might have missed some information, forgot to submit a document, and then IRCC will reject the application, and then the person will have to start the whole process all over again, which is a waste of resource for everyone, and then it puts them in the back of the queue, and then they have to work their way up. And so it just
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Kwan. Time is up for you. And with that, our panel comes to an end. On behalf of all the members of this committee, I want to take a moment to thank all the witnesses for appearing before the committee. You have provided some important input in regards to our study on processing time. If there is anything, any information you would like to provide to the committee, please feel free to send in a written submission to the clerk of the committee, and that will be circulated to all the members. So with that, our panel comes to an end. And I just want to let everyone, all the members know before we end, that on Tuesday, we will be having a subcommittee meeting from 3:30 to 5:30. So only the members who are on the subcommittee will be attending the meeting. Have a great weekend and see you on Tuesday. The meeting is adjourned.